Hello everyone, today I will be reviewing Psycho. So Psycho is directed by Alfred Hitchcock and it stars Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. So at the start of the film we see Janet Leigh's character Marion Crane steal $40,000 and she goes on the run and she ends up at Bates Motel. So Bates Motel is run by a man called Norman Bates, who's played by Anthony Perkins. And Norman Bates runs this hotel with his elderly mother and they live in a house around the back of the motel. Now, if you've seen any Alfred Hitchcock films, you'll know what to expect from this, because Hitchcock was a master of suspense. He's very good at doing thrillers, and in my opinion, this is his finest film. So one of the most famous scenes in this film is the shower sequence where someone gets stabbed, and that is really one of the highlights of this film. There's a few scenes which are quite suspenseful and thrilling in this film, but this is the one which everybody talks about who has seen it, or whether you haven't seen it or not. It's quite a well-known scene in cinema. And one of the things that makes this film work, and particularly the shower scene, is with Bernard Herrmann's musical score. So Bernard Herrmann's done the score for a few other Hitchcock films, including Vertigo, which was also a very good score. But this one is probably one of the greatest film scores of all time for this film, really. And the score itself, it's filled with lots of pieces of music. So we get some deep music, some higher music, some low, some high. It really is sort of all over the place, and it really keeps you on the edge of your seat, a bit like this film in general, really. And the music really works so well. It's very suspenseful, very scary, very thrilling, and it really, keeps you on your toes and sort of makes you wonder what's going to happen next, what's around the corner. And Alfred Hitchcock is brilliant at doing this, especially in this film. Now, this film was actually shot in black and white, even though it came out in 1960, which was a time when most films were in colour. And one of the reasons Hitchcock wanted it to be in black and white was to cut down the costs. Now, this film actually had about an £800,000 budget, I believe, $800,000 budget, which, even then wasn't very much for a Hollywood film. But this film actually ended up doing very well at the box office, especially compared to some of his other films. So this film certainly made Hitchcock a lot of money. Another reason that they decided to film it in black and white was because there is some blood which is in this film, particularly in the shower scene, and Hitchcock thought that it wouldn't be good to show so much blood, so it would look better in black and white, and they actually used chocolate syrup for the blood because it looks like blood when it's in black and white. Now, one thing which is very interesting about this film is the narrative structure of it. So when you watch a lot of Hollywood films, you expect the story to go a certain way, but this one really keeps you guessing. So it goes in a certain direction and it veers off into another direction about a third of the way through, and what you thought was going to happen, almost the complete opposite happens, and it just goes in a direction which you would never expect. If you haven't seen this film before, you certainly would be very surprised by how things turn out in this film. Now, this is one of those films that has a twist at the end of it. I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but I think it's probably one of the best film twists of all time, if not the best film twist of all time. I mean, it's up there with all the best ones, and it does it very well because when you're watching a film, you want to find out what happens at the end, you want to see where it goes, and it constantly keeps you guessing, keeps you on the edge of your seat. And there are so many scenes in this film where it's almost very unexpected what is going to happen next, and you're thinking, is something bad about to happen, or am I just making it up in my mind? Well, that's at least how I was thinking when I watched it. I've seen this film a few times, and I have to admit, I appreciated it the most recent time I watched it more because I was focusing a lot more on what happened, although I already knew the twist at the end, I already knew what was happening, where it was going. There were certain other scenes which I appreciated more, particularly with the way the characters interact. So near the start, we get Marion Crane meet Norman Bates, and there's the scenes where they're talking is absolutely brilliant. And Norman Bates is a very interesting character. He's one of the most iconic film characters. And really, his character is very happy. He seems like a very likable guy. Seems like a type of guy that you all know. But at the same time, he's very nervous and slightly unsettling. And he seems to twitch a bit. He seems very socially awkward. And the interaction he has with Marion Crane is very interesting because obviously at this time, Marion Crane has just stolen $40,000 and is on the run. And we get Norman Bates talking to Marion about his mother, who's very controlling over him. And Marion starts to think more about stealing the money. So Norman says things like, we all go a little mad sometimes, we all go a little crazy sometimes, and we all do a mad thing every now and then. And that ties in with Marion's part of the story, what she just did. Now, although this is really a horror film, the violence of it isn't very explicit. So it's not violence which is shown on screen and thrown in your face. In fact, a lot of the violence is often in between the cuts or in between the takes. And Hitchcock is very good at this. He's very good at leaving up to the viewer's imagination about the actual violence. Even in the shower scene, there's lots of cuts. We don't actually see many bits where the knife is cutting the skin. I think there's only one very brief shot where the knife is actually piercing the skin, and the rest of it is left up to the audience to make up in their minds. And this is absolutely brilliant, because often as the audience, what we're often scared of most is not what we're shown on screen, but what we think is going to happen and what we imagine to be happening from what is shown to us, where we fill in the gaps of our minds. And Hitchcock, once again, was the absolute master of this, because he knows how audiences' minds work and he knows what to do when making a film like this. One very interesting fact about this film is that this was the first Hollywood film to show a toilet flushing, and this happens when Marion tears up some paper and throws it down a toilet and then flushes it. Okay, maybe it's not a that interesting fact, but anyway, it's still something random, which I find quite interesting, because that was quite taboo in Hollywood at all the time. But anyway, there we go. I think in terms of the greatest thrillers of all time, or certainly the greatest Hollywood thrillers, this is up there. It's arguably could be seen as the greatest thriller of all time, or one of the greatest horror films of all time. And in fact, this film actually paved the way for a lot of the slasher movies which were in the 1970s, ones such as Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and all going through after that, because this really saw the birth of a new type of horror movie. So I have to say Psycho, I think, is probably one of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion. I mean, some people may disagree with me on that. Some people do prefer other Hitchcock films like North by Northwest and Vertigo, or even Rear Window. But in my opinion, this is certainly my favourite Hitchcock film of all time. And for that, I'm going to give it a rating of 10 out of 10. So Psycho. So there we go, guys. What do you think? Have you seen Psycho? What do you think of it? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.